And we're on. So we are here today, back on Play It Forward, with filmmaker Shea Butler, who directed, produced, and adapted the screenplay of The Trial of Ben Barry. Shea, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Thank you. You were nominated by Mary Lou Belli, and your film is a pretty, bold film, certainly, and well acted. Um, your leads are really great. It's essentially about the theme of redemption, father and son. They split up. Son goes his way at an early age and bounces around from jail to jail, and dad has a sort of suspicious, potentially criminal history that seems to be emerging now in his late age. And so the son comes back after his latest stint in jail and tries to help his father. And you know, that's basically the theme. Can you, did I miss anything? Would you like to elaborate on it?
Well, the story really is about redemption and reconciliation and also father-son story. And we all have things that we regret in our past. And sometimes you can go back and fix them. Sometimes you just have to come to terms with them. And sometimes you need to reach out a helping hand to someone else or have one held out to you. So it's really about redemption and reconciliation and the sins of the past.
Yeah, coming up to visit us in the present, the biblical line, deeds done in the dark, will be brought to the light. Shay, if you don't mind just slinking down in your chair, we're just cropped at right above your eye line, so we get a bit more of your head. I know that must not be the most comfortable.
Well,
yeah, thank you. Perfect.
Perfect. Great.
I've cheat that way many times, or a few times. Anyway, so with that setup, what was your inspiration for investing your heart and energy into this particular film and adaptation of this story?
I came to LA and Hollywood more focused on writing than directing when I first got here. And over the course of the years and doing various jobs in the industry, writing, I was an assistant to exec producers, a script supervisor, I was a development exec for a while. I realized that telling the story just through writing was only part of the process, and that it was collaborative, and that each aspect of production really made the story bigger and better. And I wanted my hands in that pie as well. And I always thought, wow, I'd love to direct. Let me see if I can do it. Let me see if I like it. A lot of times when you want to do something, when you actually do it, it's not quite what you assumed it would be.
Sure.
And the only way to find out is to do it. So I set out to do a short film. This is my first one. And I was going to write something for me to direct. In the meantime, being part of a writer's group, we would critique each other's pieces. And Aaron Iverson was part of that writer's group. And he had written a play, and he was doing a cold reading of the play and putting it up on stage. So the whole group went to support him. I just fell in love with the stage play. I fell in love with the story. And I went up to him afterwards and said, I'm looking for something to direct. Would you adapt this into a short story? And he went, no. And I was like heartbroken because I loved it so much. But right away, he just said, but you can have it. You can adapt it. You can do whatever you want with it, which I thought was so lovely of him. I spent 3 or 4 months adapting.
Oh, okay. But just to kind of get at more of the, depth of the question, those are really interesting circumstances around how that particular story came to you. But when you sat there and you watched it in the audience and you fell in love with it, what is it that you fell in love with? That's really what we're trying to get at. What is that connection that you made with the story that you felt you wanted to tell?
I think it was the combination of the parent-child relationship, because that is so important to tell and to experience. And that whole idea of bringing to life a part of our country's history. This story takes place in the 70s, but the impetus for the breakup between the father and son took place in the early 60s. And to have that richness of change in our country at that time, I always felt was very important to keep front and center, because it's very easy to get complacent. Oh, we made the change, things are moving forward, and we forget, and we must never forget. And through this one man's story and his son's story, it brought to life an era that we need to always keep aware of.
You know, as humans and as individuals, we have come from all these different walks of life and backgrounds, and things trigger us in positive and negative ways based on our predilections and historical past and all sorts of things. So, you know, to really get to the heart of it, I mean, we're getting closer, and it's the racial history of our country and the history of segregation and just violence and awful, terrible chapter. And then also that father and son story. So what is it about those two elements, in your own personal makeup really kind of sparked you and got you alive to do this?
I think part of it is that I had a very wonderful upbringing, and I realized how lucky I was, and that it was just the luck of the draw. Circumstances could have been very different. Mm. And we need to explore not just the world that we personally know, but we need to be aware of other aspects of the world, of humanity, of different places and different times. And in terms of the political and racial aspect, we have some things to be ashamed of in our history of this country. Through the past 200-300 years that we settled this country, and we can't sweep it under the rug. And people have a tendency to repeat mistakes. Mistakes that happened 100 years ago, we're doing again now, and we can't forget. And through this one man's story and his son's story, I could bring that to the forefront.
Well, that's really interesting. So it sounds like there was a two-part impetus for you emotionally. One was this using film and narrative art of filmmaking as this exploration into the other.
Right.
And then having also the topic of the film be that's about reconciliation, be a part of the process of reconciliation.
Absolutely. And also, people sometimes do things that they think at that time is correct and right, but in retrospect aren't. They sometimes feel like there's no way out. And you need to look back at that and see how to change that. Mm-hmm. We are creatures of circumstance as well.
Yeah, so kind of taking the project as a cultural reflection on to maybe use it as a means of going forward, and how can we make better choices today.
Absolutely. Life is nothing but choices every day, and we have to be aware of the consequences, short-term and long-term.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Appreciate you digging there. And what do you think are the core messages or message of the film?
I think reconciliation and forgiveness, and not just forgiveness of each other, but forgiveness of self.
Okay, yeah. I mean, those are important things to do, certainly. And I guess, how are those things done in the film? I think we can all agree that, oh yeah, those are, I want to do that, and that should be a cornerstone of our society and culture, and upbringing, but it's difficult to do it. So how do we do it?
We help each other. This his son came back to help him forgive himself, recognize that he had done wrong, and to say sorry. And until that moment, he couldn't move on. He couldn't go on with his life. So his son came to help him. And when you see the film, the son tells the story about who came to help him when he was at rock bottom. And someone helped him. Now he was paying it forward and helping his father forgive himself and move on.
Hmm. I wonder how, in the context of this film, and basically this racial black and white racial history, there are many racial histories that this country has, and so with this particular one, um, how do you envision forgiveness happening?
I think forgiveness comes first by admitting wrong and really not hiding from what you've done and looking at it clearly, not only the circumstances of the time, but now in retrospect, being able to look at it and say, yes, I should have taken a stand. No, I should have walked away. Whatever that choice is, sometimes it's clearer to look back on it after time has passed. But when you're in the emotion of the moment, you can't see every facet of what is going on. And sometimes you're just caught in a trap. And by really looking at it and admitting it and owning it, then you can maybe let go of some of the chains of remorse and chains of shame and chains that hold you back. And hopefully, once they're gone, you can accept that part of you and say, okay, I need to atone. I need to say I'm sorry. It's done. I need to move forward, and hopefully, I'll be forgiven.
Yeah, it's interesting because in this movie, I think the suggestion is there that it's never too late for forgiveness, and forgiveness begins with like you were saying, atoning yourself, and it seems like the son has forgiven his father, right? He comes there to help him, and in through his own forgiveness, he's able to open up the atonement, forgiveness, the self forgiveness of his father. So it's interesting, in this cultural climate, if we were to say, okay, well, if we were to make a parallel between that, then it would be black people forgiving white people of generations prior for the injustice, and that allowing this generation, and even those people that may be still living that were a part of that injustice, to forgive themselves. Do you think that's a fair parallel to make?
I think so. I think so. And the biggest thing is to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, yeah,
And and by sweeping it under the rug, whether it's the smaller individual stories or the larger story of this country or other countries' history, you hide from it. And then it's very easy to make those mistakes again. And
yeah.
by
And the
bringing it
question is it still happening? To what degree is it still happening, right? And
out,
how can we prevent
after,
it from happening? Segregation is still very prevalent. Incarceration is still very real. And, how are these things? What's that?
so is slavery.
What's
There's
that?
slavery. There's huge human trafficking going on in this current age,
Yeah.
and we just aren't as aware of these kind of social injustices as we should be. And by ignoring them, they're allowing, it's easier for it to go on. But if we talk about the past and the mistakes we as a human race, not just white or black or green or yellow or whatever color,
Mhm.
hopefully we'll keep learning and not repeat so many mistakes of the past.
Well, yeah, I think that's the greatest lesson of all is just to, like we started out from the beginning, is not let things fly under the rug and not be discussed, but make sure that those deeds
Mm-hmm.
were done in the dark are brought to the light. So with that, we'll go right to the last and question is, how have you been changed since making this film?
I think it helped make me more socially conscious because it affected me when I saw the staged reading of it. And that was just a cold reading. And it made my heart break. The choices that the father made, thinking he was making the right choices at that time to keep himself and his family safe. And instead, it ended up ripping his family apart. And it made me look at things, I think, with clearer eyes and see things faster, not just walking by things. And I think that's really important. And I think whether it's a big social issue that a film tackles or a social issue through a small individual story, they're all important to tell.
Yeah, well, I think that's cool what you said in terms of seeing things faster. I mean, that's the power of art, and the success of it is when it transmits knowledge in a way that changes your outlook on the world, and you all of a sudden get it or get it differently.
And that's the power of film, and it's the power of the written word, it's the power of song, it's the power of the message, however it comes across.
Right.
And we're very lucky to have access to those kind of mediums. And so it's important not to just entertain with them, but to also teach through them. And again, you can teach through a fictional story and open people's eyes that way. And it's important to do so. And it can be pure entertainment at the same time.
Agreed. How did you mature as an artist, and what did you learn as a director? So I'm throwing out one more question at you. What advice, essentially, would you pass on as a director to other emerging filmmakers and other filmmakers out there, not just emerging, already emerged, hatched?
Not to let the word no stop you. This was my very first directing effort. And I learned so much from all the artists who came and helped me and supported me through this effort. And part of that was, maybe it was a little naive of me, but I just said, if I don't ask, it won't happen. That's how I got Richard Roundtree, the original Shaft, to play the father. This is a short film. It was a 2-day shoot. It was under, the short film contract. I did not know Richard, but he was on my wish list of actors for the part. And called up his manager, and his manager said, well, he normally doesn't do shorts. Well, to my mind, normally doesn't do short, sure. Not a firm no. So I sent the manager the script, and Richard felt the story was important to tell for many of the same reasons that we talked about. Same thing with Lawrence Gilliard Jr., who was on The Wire and is currently on The Deuce on HBO. Both of those gentlemen are fathers, and they felt it was very important storyline about African-American father-sons, the disenfranchisement that happens in that world of fathers and sons, or mothers and daughters even. And that's where story becomes very important. But if I had just taken the, oh, he doesn't normally do shorts, and said, okay, thank you, I'd never gotten them. But if you don't ask, it's 100% no. If you ask, it's only a 50% chance of a no. It could be 50% chance of yes, and those are pretty good odds. So don't let no stop you if you have a passion for something. And each time learn something new, and then turn it around and help other people do the same. I volunteer on friends' short films, or even people I don't know. If someone's called up and said, hey, they need a script supervisor, because that's my day job, can you come help them? It's a 2-day short, there's no pay. If I'm not busy, I will, because other people did that for me. And you build your community that way.
That's great advice. Thank you so much, Shea Butler. It was a pleasure to have you on the show. A great film, and I look forward to seeing more stuff. So please let us know your future work, and we'll share it with our community.
Well, people right now can go to YouTube. There's a project called Trouble Creek, 7-episode web series. It's been winning some awards around Best Director, Best Actor. It stars Jason Gedrick, Deborah Ferrantino, and it's called Trouble Creek. It's up free for people to watch. They can go to youtube.com/Trouble Creek, all one word, and watch all 7 episodes there. That's one of the most current things that I've been directing and producing. It was created by Stacy K. Black. She and I produced it, and then we split directing duties.
All right. That's it. That's the word from Shea Butler. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All the best. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.